on that. Thanks everybody for joining us for the Global Cannabis Network Collective's discussion on the opportunities in Peru. As always, we like to thank our sponsors, and especially Boveda, who continues to support and sponsor all of our activities throughout the year. They've been great partners for a number of years, so thanks to Boveda for allowing all this to be possible. And also O2 Vape, who is specifically sponsoring several of our Peruvian programs this year. We're grateful for their support as well. Wanted to level set a little bit on what it is we're doing and talking about today. Then we'll introduce our guests and get into the content. But for those of you who may not be aware, the Global Cannabis Network Collective is a organization that brings together companies that are operating multinationally in the cannabis space, all throughout the world. And one of our members is Futura Farms in Peru, and they came to us about 6-7 months ago talking about the changing legal frameworks and dynamics in Peru, the opportunities that were there both domestically and as laws change internationally. And so we are pleased to be bringing a number of online pieces throughout the year, focusing on the Peruvian opportunity. And then we'll be co-hosting a summit in Lima in October on the 18th. The 18th will be the main day. We'll be doing some pre-events on the 17th as well. Very focused event for with policymakers there, government officials, individuals in the industry, and GCNC members, all looking to help drive deal flow, help enhance knowledge share and connectivity there. If you're in the audience and that sounds like something you might like to attend with us, please let us know. You can reach out to myself or Jillian Reddish at Project Evolve at alwaysdriveinnovation.com. We'll be happy to provide you the details. It is going to be a very limited seats. So I know it's only February and October feels like a really long way away, but give us a heads up anyway if that's of interest to you. So today I want to introduce our two guests. We have Emanuel Bernal from Wolfpack, spends a lot of time traveling the world and facilitating international commerce and trade in cannabis. And Raul Injoque from Futura Farms, an expert in all things Peru in terms of the legal framework and policy changes. And so, gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. You know, before we dive in, I know, Raul, we're going to start with you giving us a bit of an overview presentation on the current situation in Peru, and then we'll transition to Emanuel talking about the trade opportunities. Before, at the end, everybody will have some time for questions. Please do ask in the chat, though, as we go, if things pop into your mind. No need to wait until the end to field those. If we can answer them as we go, we will. And if we can't, we'll get to them at the end. But first, before we jump in, if you don't mind sort of giving us a little bit of an introduction about yourselves. I know a lot of people online and watching already know you, many may not. So Emanuel, what's the 60-second bio on you and your background?
Well, started in cannabis in 2008 as an owner-operator, vertically integrated, you know, from the beginning, which means, you know, build our cultivation, retailed our own product, made our own products as well. You know, continued in Colorado in the cannabis industry, and in 2015 started to reach out the US and try to connect with other new markets, emerging markets, seeing where we could add value, and continued on that journey. So I'm within the US and South American and other places in the world, but that's basically what I do.
Perfect. Thanks, Emanuel. And Raul, how about yourself?
Yes. Well, I have a long experience in the pharmaceutical industry. I work in the heart, in the eye, in Alcon and Pfizer. And when the legal regulations started opening up for cannabis, I was approached by my partner to think about getting a business in cannabis. I like the idea, the challenge, and boy, that it's been a challenge. Learning about the industry is quite interesting, and redundantly say challenging is not enough.
That is true, I think, for all of us. That being said, there's some unique opportunities to jump into, I think, even with the challenges that we've seen in certainly in Peru and throughout South America. I'm excited to talk about it because, frankly, 2 years ago or so, we spent a lot of time talking about Latin America as a whole and South America, and then things went quiet for a while. I think while a lot of restructuring and discussion occurred,
Yes.
and now we're starting to get some really valid traction, and we're timing things out on these discussions and our in-person meeting in October to sort of mimic what those opportunities are. So I know you've got a presentation on the current status. Why don't we pull that up and
Yes.
have you go through that, and then we can move from there.
You need to allow me to
I
share
do.
my screen.
Thank you for that.
Let me know.
You should be able to do it, Raul. Sorry, folks.
There it is. Hold on a sec.
Yeah.
Sorry. Do you see it?
Yes.
Yep. We
Okay.
see the open window, and if you go into presentation mode, we should be good.
Yes. Hold on a sec. Okay. I call my presentation Breaking Paradigms about Cannabis in Latin America. Basically because when you see the opportunities, usually you have some paradigms in your mind. And what I want is for you to see the pieces of the presentation and then make up your mind on the opportunities. My objectives is basically are to better understand the size of the opportunity in Latin America, and also to show a pathway for a greenfield development in a promising market in Latin America. Of course, we're talking about medical cannabis. We all know that the conditions treated with medical cannabis are various, and it's very successful. We also know, and I shared this video that Jeremy Kletke shared with me, we cultivate the plant in order to get that trichomes, and this beautiful flower brings all these bubbles into the market with this incredible content. And now I jump into the opportunity. When you see Latin America, usually you start with the macro data. In the macro data, you will see, wow, more than 650 million people. That's good. The GDP is incredibly big and growing 2% yearly. That's good too. If you see that per capita income is around $10,000 per person on average, that means that there is countries with 20,000 There is countries with 5,000, but it's growing. But when you see the data consolidated, you might take some wrong decisions. For example, when you put a magnifying glass, you're going to understand that Mexico and Brazil, even though are huge opportunities with regards to people and income levels, the different regulations that they have provide different challenges and opportunities. For example, in general terms, we have a lack of clearly understanding the how to use THC dispensation in the major countries in Latin America. If you see, for example, in this chart, you'll see all the green countries where recreational cannabis is allowed. Canada and the States is pretty much good, regulated, Uruguay too. But Mexico, even though has a law, it doesn't have the specific regulations to move product into the market. It's very difficult to get legal THC into the market so that doctors can apply it with patients. So, and in countries like Brazil, for example, even though it's allowed to bring the product under compassionate use system is individual. So it's very difficult to manage Brazil in that sense. I know that regulations are moving along, but we believe that the real opportunity at this moment is Peru. Why? Because Peru allows dispensation of THC with doctor prescription. About 88% of the populations are legacy users already, so there is a culture of use of consumption, and most of this consumption goes to illegal products or legacy products, which need to, they will not pass certain standards to be put into the market. In addition to that, we have around 2 million people with medical conditions that can be treated with cannabis. So that means we have a good bunch of people that could benefit of cannabis in general. And in our experience, we see that THC prescriptions grow fast once the physicians start gaining experience with it. We also learned that compounding pharmacies is key, especially in the first phase of development. And something interesting that happened last year with a new regulation, basically Peru allows the use of flower in medical cannabis, which opens the door to a lot of new opportunities. Our product portfolio currently is mostly with tinctures. However, gummies and vapes are getting into the market, and we are finding ways to better understand actually the demand and the market dynamics. And I think that the trick to a successful introduction is to learn really how your client makes decisions. What do we do in Peru? No, we know that the problem is that it is a very highly restricted market, and patients are having a lot of trouble getting to a prescription. So basically what we created is, of course, Futura Farms as a drogueria, which is basically a company with license to import cannabis into the country. But we also saw the opportunity to create the first telehealth platform specialized in cannabis in Latin America. And we developed a lot of experience with Organical. Basically, Organical is a non-plant touching health tech platform with the patient at the center and we commercialize certified products from licensed pharmacies. We just deal with licensed pharmacies. And of course, the products that we have are top quality, and also we provide medical education. If you see the story that we have from 2021 till now and the projections, we have more than 4,000 medical appointments already, more than 2,500 users. And the most common ailments are anxiety, insomnia, and chronic pain, which are very common in all the countries in general. You'll see that in 2023, we dip a little bit compared to 2022, but last year was a tough year for the cannabis industry everywhere. So we managed to maintain the interest in the market. And in 2024, we're actually currently growing at 10% compound weekly growth. So it's growing fast. Our patient journey is simple. The patient gets a medical appointment. They get the consultation from the doctor and the prescription, and then we help them through the marketplace for the product dispensation. During this year, well, during these years, actually, we gather a lot of data. We have web analytics, we have demographics, we have medical condition, and we have purchases. And we developed also some buying personas. So when you match this data mining potential with the buying personas, what you get is actually a lot of predicting tools that can help us improve our imports and also improve the introduction of products into the market. Just to show you the growth trend, as I mentioned, we're growing on a weekly basis, 10% each, and we're very confident that we're gonna reach the budget planned for this year. So that's what I wanted to share with the audience.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks, Raul.
You bet.
Really appreciate it. And some things I want to point out for the audience about the Peruvian market before we switch over to Emanuel, and also would love your perspective, Raul. So Peru currently has, give or take, about a total population of about 34 million people. And we were, observing through your presentation and elsewhere that a lot of markets, whether medicinal or otherwise, start out with a discussion around flower. And here it's somewhat inverted, right? We're not talking about, or we haven't been talking about flower. There's a lot of opportunities here in spaces that frequently come as second or third entries, talking about gummies as an example, normally doesn't happen until later. And so I do think the opportunity is different and the platform is different, but what is shifting in the near term that'll bring flower into the discussion, if at all?
Yes, let me get back a little bit to the regulatory framework. The Peruvian law was approved in 2017. In 2019, was approved what we call regulación, what we call the specifics of the law, how to import, how to produce. And in these specifics, we found that producing in Peru is highly restrictive. It's very difficult, it's very expensive, controls are difficult too. So that really didn't help the production phase. But what we found was that the commercialization of cannabis was open. And we started exploring that. We found, of course, the opportunity to do this telehealth platform. But then, after some years and lots of learnings, the government, I would say that they polished the regulation, the specifics. And when they launched or approved a new one that started back in September 1st last year, we found that flower was allowed into the market. So that really created more opportunities to bring to the market a huge pipeline of products that can benefit a lot of patients, but also we can benefit all the legacy users to come to products that are backed by certifications and all sorts of quality things that support our brands.
Okay, and just to clarify for the audience, Peru is currently a fully medical market, correct?
Yes.
Right. So, perfect. You know, Emanuel, I'm gonna use that as a segue to bring you in, because you really have been looking at the whole framework internationally, both export and import opportunities. Bring yourself up on video and you know, tell us sort of what your interest is in Peru and what you've been seeing.
Well, it's not letting me think that you stopped my video share.
There
Okay,
it
there we
is.
go.
Good.
Okay, so I think that there's definitely a lot of opportunity there compared to other markets in South America. I think most of our audience are people from the US and really wondering how they could get into these markets, you know, and I think a big one, there's a couple different ways that I'm seeing that we could get involved. Number one, we have a lot of knowledge and know-how. You know, I think that is really, really valuable for all of us that have been doing this for a couple years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. You know, we have a lot to offer. So I think if we're in the US, how can we get involved in Peru? I think something that we'd be able to import is hemp, right? However, collaboration is another big topic I think that I would like to talk about, is collaborating with operators that have you know, that have relations in South America and Peru, you know, that are also in the industry, and that could maybe take some advice from somebody that has been making vapes, you know, somebody that has been making gummies, people that have been making oil, you know, branding. And the way I'm looking at it is kind of like a medical dispensary. The model over there is a pharmacy. So I kind of step back and think about, okay, us that operated in the medical in the fields with medical dispensaries, medical licenses, it's almost the same thing as getting a prescription from a Walgreens and getting your you know, your medicine. You know, so that's kind of how I'm looking at it, except it's cannabis. So that's really what I'm looking at, is how can I add value with some operators in Peru. Maybe what could I import from the US? You know, maybe they need some type of distillate, maybe some type of oil, some type of tinctures, you know, and eventually maybe even some CBD flower, you know,
Yep.
from the US. Now, if we're talking, you know, maybe operations in Colombia, well, there's a huge advantage there, because most of these markets that you're going to export or import into, they all want certain GMP standards, and Peru's really not asking for that at the moment. So I think that's a huge window of opportunity to get your products into a market like Peru, because of the non-GMP that's not required, you know, to import products. So I really think that that's one of the biggest opportunities there. Exporting and getting products into other markets, it's very challenging because of the certifications that have to go down country to country, you know. So I would really look at that. I think flower in general is one of the biggest selling SKUs. I know in the US it is. So Peru really allowing that, I think that's huge. The other one is vapes. How many places are not welcoming vapes? They're actually trying to ban vapes, and Peru's doing the opposite. They're allowing it, like you said, Chris, earlier. They have a different approach, and I really do like the approach. Most of these rollouts are taking longer than normal, but I really do see Peru offering dispensing products. That's another big opportunity, another reason why we should all be looking at Peru.
Yeah, I wonder, two questions that come to mind out of that, and I'll start with the GMP one first. Raul, we were talking yesterday on our prep call a little bit about this, and I'm wondering if in the short run, while that likely helps develop a domestic market in Peru, which is important, a lot of countries have a not in my backyard philosophy, right? They'll allow a lot of things as long as you send it elsewhere. And in Peru, that's not the case. You've created a system with the pharmacies that are allowing for a domestic market creation, but by not requiring the same level of GMP standards that, say, exist in Europe, is this a short-term opportunity for domestic, but a long-term detriment to sort of global participation in export? What do you think?
No, I do think that we'll catch up with requirements. That's typical what happens. You can open up basically to learn, and then you start picking up all the learnings from other markets, and you start tapping the filters to get the product into the market. So I would say that within the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see that coming into the market, which is going to be good for patients.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just to clarify, it's not that they don't have production standards. It's just not to the specifics of, say, EU GMP. There still are quality controls in place. They still are running it specifically through the pharmacies and have a number of quality checks.
Yes.
It's just the multi-million-dollar investments required, for example, to set up EU GMP facilities aren't currently in place. So
no, and all the requirements that we have to bring raw material from different countries. We import typically from the States and from Colombia, and their certifications are top notch. It's not that they are not certified. And the quality of compounding pharmacy teams that we have in the market is very well developed. They're actually very strict in their protocols. And before they get the product to the patients, they need to check everything before they pass it to them.
Yep. Yeah, there was some discussion in the chat I saw about it. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood that there are indeed lots of quality control, certifications, requirements, and all of that to ensure product safety. It's just they're taking a different approach that's allowing, I think, a more robust market. And to Emanuel's point, giving opportunities for collaboration and partnership in ways that are different from a lot of other markets. It creates a nice stair-step opportunity, in my view, to the rest of South America. And then as markets develop, of course, the South American opportunity to engage with North America and Europe is currently happening, and I think will only get better. But Emanuel, as you've been looking at especially these markets and the interactions between, say, Colombia and the growing market in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico to the north, what's your thought on why would one start in Peru and then use that sort of as a beachhead versus any of these other any of these other nations that are also progressing?
Yeah, I think I would like to say I see them progressing, but I really see them stalling. You know, for example, like Mexico, you know, we've all been there. You know, I've started lobbying down there in 2015, and we thought that we were gonna be selling cannabis in Mexico in 2016. So that still hasn't happened. And it's just really, I really don't see it happening for a long time in Mexico, you know. So I kind of, you know, shifted avenues to look to new markets. Brazil, I think that it's a really limited market for the fact that it's an import per patient. You know, so you're importing, you know, a couple different products for one or two patients. You know, so it's really not feasible. There's really, it's really costly. It's really expensive to do that. So I don't think that the time is correct. However, Peru, there's a different approach. You know, Peru is allowing you to import. They don't have really a limit on how much you could import. You know, however, this whole industry is about timing, when to start, when to get in, and when to get out. You know, and I think that right now it's a good time to look at Peru for the fact that we could work with them on growing, you know, the market, the industry, because it's so new, and they are allowing importing right now, THC and hemp products. I think it's a good opportunity for branding as well. I really think that branding is a big part of this in the long run. So the people that want to have brand presence globally, I think it's definitely a good opportunity to try to figure out a way how to collaborate with some Peruvians or some Latins and get your brand over to Peru.
Yep. And Raul, what's the perspective of the policymakers, government officials, legislators? I mean, while there are a lot of things moving forward, I mean, part of the reason that we're having this conversation and talking about the GCNC and Futura Farms working on this trade summit in October is we want to continue to see that grow. But we also want to have conversations with the policymakers and government officials who are trying to move things forward. What's the dynamic at the government level?
I would say that it's extremely positive. You know that cannabis at this moment is medical, but Congress people are at the moment they're evaluating a hemp law, which will expand the opportunities for production in the case of Peru. And they developed actually 3 hemp bills, and they discussed them already in their committees. And there is just now one bill that is passing to the floor, hopefully in April. We really want it to be approved sometime during the second quarter. And that will open the door for more investment, more production of biomass, grain, everything.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's a large part of the agenda for October, right?
Yes.
Is to talk about, we're assuming, folks, that this is going to move forward, and from there there'll be, you know, adjustments and opportunities that expand beyond what we're even talking about today in the current market. And I think that's part of what creates a lot of optimism around the marketplace. Is there is an attention to the fact that building a domestic market that is sustainable is critically important to long-term success. Participating in the global landscape, both exports and imports, is important for long-term success. Adding thoughtful legislation as things improve, adding additional layers as needed to regulations, but not just for the sake of it, is important. It's been a pretty quiet story for a while, but it's really interesting to see, you know, how this creates opportunities. What has been, Raul, your view in the relationship between Peruvian companies and Colombian companies in cannabis? Because I know very close. There's a lot of strong ties there.
Yes.
How has that interaction been working as some of the Colombian legislation and rules have been stalling out and Peru's been moving forward?
Yes. We found a lot of common ground with Colombian companies, and they are extremely interested in exporting. As a matter of fact, I think that the Colombian law promotes export more than the development of their market. In our case, we are working together with these companies to, for example, in the case of flour, you know that flour being a living, even though it's dry, is considered a living biological matter. So it needs to pass some certifications, some health authorities certifications in this case. And we are promoting the conversation in between Colombia's ICA and Peruvian SENASA, so that they put together, they harmonize their protocols so that Colombian companies can export flour to Peruvian markets without a problem. That is taking a little time because we speak, even though we speak the same language, we speak a different language with regards to cannabis. So we need to harmonize it. And I think we're getting there. And hopefully by October this year, actually for our meeting, we're going to have flour in the Peruvian market.
Yeah, that's great. I like the word harmonization. It makes political and communication differences sound beautiful. So I'm glad I think I'm going to choose to use that word a lot in 2024, not only on these webinars but elsewhere too. So for those of you in the audience, I'm going to shift into Q&A here pretty quick. We've got a few that have come through already. But if you have questions, please put them in there. And, this webinar, while I think it's great to have it, obviously it's not going to answer all questions everywhere about everything in Peru. And so as we answer a couple of them here today, but as others pop into your minds, please don't hesitate to reach out to us with them. We're trying to create a bank of questions, a bank of discussion points that we can answer as we go, and also so that we can help support the expansion of these markets. That's sort of the mission of the GCNC in general, is to champion collaboration, help policymakers and rule makers as they ask with factual information, educated information. And so a large part of that success comes from people like yourselves in the audience, people like Raul and Emanuel working together and having these conversations together to really champion sound policy and opportunities. So I think some of these questions we've answered in some form or fashion, but I want to get specific on some of them to make sure we highlight them. One was around seeds in particular, and I think this continues to grow in importance as flour becomes more of a discussion. But what are the rules, if any special ones, around both the import or the export of seeds, genetics, in and out of Peru?
Yeah, in my case, I don't have much experience importing seeds because we're not in production phase. So, but what I learned is that in Colombia, there is a bunch of companies that they do export actively seeds to different countries. They have a lot of good varieties, either for medical use, for recreational use, or hemp. So Colombia is a great pool of production for different varieties.
And I think, you know, for the specifics on that question, for the person that asked, there is still an ongoing discussion, I think, at the government level as the discussion on flower comes along as to what exactly happens with genetics and local varieties. Every country around the world has that conversation at some point.
Yes.
Around what can and can't be done and what those regulations will be. That will be something that we update as this discussion progresses in Peru over the next couple of months. Look for an update specifically on that around late April or early May, because I would be shocked if there aren't some updates in the legislation that comes out. But we don't want to say one thing now and then all of a sudden it changes in a month and a half and we've led people down the wrong path. The other question I see here is
reimbursement.
Yes. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yes, just briefly. We're at the current in the current state. Much of it is out of pocket. However, a couple of insurance companies already are covering the use of cannabis, and they're testing the market. It's not that it's open to everyone, it's just a couple of companies, but of course, we're looking at the impact of this in the market. We think that the major insurance companies are taking this into analysis, and hopefully they're going to be jumping into these reimbursements also.
Great, thank you. Are there any other specific questions from the audience? Please put those in the Q&A. Otherwise, I want to thank everyone again for attending. Emanuel, Raul, thank you so much for hopping on with us and talking about the opportunities. We really do encourage follow-up questions. I see Jill just put our contact information in the chat, so that's good. We're very easy to find. It's part of our business to make sure we can be. And we're looking forward to having this continued conversation throughout the year. And then please do put October 17th and 18th on your calendars for Lima, Peru. We're really excited to be able to go down there. Most of my Q4, with the exception of a small show I have to attend in Nevada in December, will be in South America this year and really starting to re-engage the GCNC more actively. Last year was sort of Europe themed, and the first part of this year has a lot of that, but making sure that we're integrating knowledge and information about what's going on in Peru and throughout South America is critically important. So thank you guys very much, and thanks to everybody else. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.